In the quiet lull of a 1970s afternoon where the sun cast long, lazy shadows and the air hummed with the distant echoes of a world in slow motion, there existed a realm subtly different from today's. It was a time when the days stretched endlessly, each moment filled with small, intricate rituals now lost in the relentless march of progress. Picture a rotary phone sitting in the corner of a dimly lit room, its circular dial a gateway to distant voices. Each number required effort, a deliberate motion that connected people not just through wires but through a shared dance of anticipation and patience. The phone's ring was a rare event, a break in the day's monotony, each call a story in itself. In this era, Saturday mornings held a special kind of magic. Children, bleary-eyed but full of excitement, would gather in front of bulky television sets, the screens flickering to life with the vibrant colors of cartoons. These animated tales were more than just entertainment. They were a weekly ritual, a shared experience that bound a generation in a common thread of imagination. The 1970s were also a time of tangible music. The radio, a constant companion, was a treasure trove of melodies waiting to be captured on cassette tapes. Recording a song off the radio was an art form, a test of timing and dexterity. Each mixtape was a personal journal, a musical diary that held the essence of a moment, a feeling, a memory. In this world, the milkman's daily rounds were a symbol of a simpler life, a time when community and trust were woven into the fabric of everyday existence. The clink of glass bottles at the doorstep was a sound that echoed through neighborhoods, a reminder of a service based on human connection rather than convenience. This was a time when the world was larger and mysteries were hidden not in the digital ether but in the folds of physical maps. Journeys were adventures and getting lost was a part of the discovery. The open road was a canvas and each trip a brushstroke that painted a unique story. Yet, amidst these seemingly mundane details of daily life, there was an undercurrent of something deeper, a sense of quiet introspection and unspoken understanding. It was as if the very act of living in the 1970s carried with it a certain weight, a certain significance that has since been lost in the noise of the modern world. Rotary phones. In the quiet corners of the 1970s home, the rotary phone stood as an unassuming sentinel of communication. Its presence was both ordinary and extraordinary, a mundane object that held within it the power to connect lives across distances. The ritual of using the rotary phone was a dance of fingers and numbers, a tactile experience now lost in the age of touchscreens and speed dials. The act of dialing was deliberate and thoughtful. Each number required a full turn of the dial, a circular journey that required patience and precision. The sound of the mechanism as it rotated and returned was a rhythmic accompaniment to the process, a mechanical melody that marked the passage of time and effort. This was not the instant communication of today's world. It was a process that made each call meaningful, each connection a deliberate choice. In the 1970s, the phone was often anchored to a spot in the house, usually in the hallway or living room. It was a communal device shared by the household, its cord a literal tie to a fixed point. Conversations were not private affairs, but public ones, often overheard by family members, a shared experience in an age where privacy was not so fiercely guarded. The phone numbers themselves were a collection of familiar patterns memorized and dialed by muscle memory. They were not just codes, but sequences known by heart, each number associated with a friend, a family member, a local business. The act of remembering these numbers was a mental exercise, a cognitive mapping of social connections. For the children of the 1970s, the rotary phone was a source of fascination and frustration. The slow process of dialing, especially for numbers with lots of zeros and nines, was a test of patience. Yet there was a sense of accomplishment in successfully completing a call, in navigating the dial to reach out and touch someone's life. Saturday morning cartoons. In the 1970s, Saturday mornings held a special kind of enchantment, especially for the children. As dawn broke and the first rays of sunlight crept through the curtains, there was a palpable sense of excitement in the air. It was the time of Saturday morning cartoons, a weekly ritual that was eagerly anticipated by kids across the country. The ritual began with the soft patter of feet as children, still in their pajamas, made their way to the living room. The television, a bulky box with dials and antennas, was the portal to a world of wonder. With a flick of the switch and a gentle hum, the screen would come to life, illuminating the room with vibrant colors and animated characters. For the next few hours, the outside world ceased to exist. The cartoons, with their catchy theme songs and larger-than-life characters, captivated the young audience. Shows like Scooby-Doo, The Flintstones, and Looney Tunes were not just entertainment, they were a shared cultural experience, a common language spoken by children everywhere. These cartoons were more than just moving images on a screen. They were a vehicle for imagination, a catalyst for play. Each episode was a new adventure, a new story to be absorbed and later reenacted in backyards and playgrounds. The heroes and villains, the jokes and jingles all became part of the tapestry of childhood memories. For parents, Saturday morning cartoons were a welcome respite, a few hours of peace as their children were glued to the screen, lost in the world of animation. It was a time when households across the nation followed the same routine, a communal experience that transcended geographical boundaries. In the era before on-demand streaming and 24-hour children's networks, Saturday morning cartoons were a special event, a weekly treat that was looked forward to with great anticipation. They marked a time of innocence and simplicity, a time when the biggest decision was choosing between cereal or toast while watching your favorite show. Recording music from the radio. In the 1970s, before the era of digital downloads and streaming services, capturing music was an art form practiced by many but mastered by few. It was the era of recording songs directly from the radio onto cassette tapes, a ritual that required patience, precision, and a bit of luck. This practice was not just about preserving music, it was a personal endeavor, a way to capture a moment in time. The process began with anticipation, as kids and teenagers sat by their radios, fingers poised over the record and play buttons of their cassette players. The goal was to catch the beginning of a favorite song as it played on the airwaves, a task that often meant hours of listening and waiting. The skill lay in starting the recording at just the right moment and stopping it before the DJ's voice cut in at the end. Each cassette tape became a curated collection of favorite hits, a musical diary that reflected the tastes and moods of its creator. These mixtapes were more than just compilations. They were expressions of identity, handmade gifts, and symbols of friendship. Exchanging mixtapes was a common practice, a way to share a piece of oneself with others. The radio was the primary source of new music, and DJs were the gatekeepers. Their choices shaped the playlists of countless mixtapes. The excitement of hearing a new song and successfully recording it was a small triumph, a moment of joy in the pre-internet world of music discovery. Recording from the radio also meant embracing imperfections. The sound quality was often far from perfect, with static interference or fluctuations in volume. Yet these imperfections added character to the recordings, making them unique artifacts of the time. The Milkman Deliveries. In the 1970s, the daily arrival of the milkman was a familiar and comforting routine, a symbol of a bygone era of personalized service and community connection. Each morning, households would wake up to find fresh bottles of milk waiting at their doorstep, delivered by the local milkman who was as much a part of the neighborhood as the trees and the sidewalks. The milkman's role transcended mere delivery. He was a trusted visitor, often greeted by name. His arrival was sometimes the cue for brief but friendly exchanges, a moment of human connection before the day's hustle began. For children, the clink of glass bottles and the sight of the milk truck were sources of fascination, a part of their daily landscape. Milk was not the only item on the milkman's list. He often carried other essentials like butter, cream, and sometimes eggs, making his rounds an anticipated event for more than just dairy needs. The convenience of having these staples delivered right to your door was a luxury in an age before the prevalence of large supermarkets and online shopping. The milk bottles themselves were a symbol of sustainability long before the concept became a global concern. Made of glass and reusable, they were returned, washed, and refilled, a cycle that embodied a simpler, more environmentally conscious way of life. For families, the Milkman's Deliveries were more than just a transaction. They were a part of a community tapestry, a reminder of a time when business was personal and local. The milkman knew his customers, often aware of the goings-on in their lives, and his presence was a steady, reliable one in a rapidly changing world. Drive-in theaters. In the 1970s, the drive-in theater was a cultural icon, a symbol of American leisure and the magic of cinema under the stars. These outdoor theaters, with their massive screens rising against the night sky, offered a unique movie-going experience that was part social gathering, part cinematic adventure. Arriving at a drive-in theater was an event in itself. Families would pack into their cars, often dressed in pajamas and armed with blankets and pillows, ready for a double feature. Teenagers would crowd into convertibles, seeking a mix of entertainment and a taste of freedom. The drive-in was more than just a place to watch movies. It was a communal space where people came together to share an experience. The ritual of finding the perfect spot, adjusting the speaker on the car window, and settling in for the evening was a part of the allure. The sound of laughter and chatter filled the air as people mingled and children played in the spaces between the rows of cars. The drive-in was a social hub, a place where community was as important as the films being shown. The movies themselves, often a mix of the latest hits and timeless classics, were secondary to the experience of watching them in this unique setting. The flickering images on the giant screen viewed from the comfort of one's car created a sense of intimacy and privacy even in a crowded lot. Intermissions were opportunities to visit the concession stand where the aroma of popcorn and hot dogs added to the sensory experience. These breaks were as much a part of the evening as the movies, a time to stretch, chat with neighbors, and enjoy the simple pleasures of snacks and soft drinks. Encyclopedias. In the 1970s, before the digital age ushered in the era of instant information, encyclopedias were the revered guardians of knowledge. These hefty tomes, often proudly displayed on bookshelves in family homes, were much more than just books. They were portals to the world, offering a wealth of information on almost every conceivable subject. Owning a set of encyclopedias was a symbol of intellectual aspiration, a commitment to learning and understanding. For children and adults alike, these books were a first stop in the quest for knowledge, whether for a school project, a personal interest, or simply the joy of learning something new. The process of flipping through the pages, the feel of the paper, and the smell of the ink were all part of the experience. Each volume of an encyclopedia set was a treasure trove of information, richly illustrated with photographs, diagrams, and maps. The articles, written by experts and scholars, were concise yet comprehensive, covering topics from the mundane to the exotic. The world felt graspable, contained within the covers of these books, waiting to be discovered. The ritual of looking up information in an encyclopedia was a deliberate and thoughtful process. It required patience and often led to serendipitous discoveries. In searching for a specific topic, one might stumble upon an unrelated but equally fascinating subject, leading to hours of unplanned reading and exploration. In the classroom, encyclopedias were invaluable resources. Students would gather around these books, working together to find information, the shared pursuit of knowledge fostering a sense of camaraderie and cooperation. The encyclopedia was a trusted source, a foundation upon which arguments were built and understanding deepened. Physical maps and road atlases. In the 1970s, long before the advent of GPS and digital navigation, physical maps and road atlases were essential tools for travel and exploration. These folded paper guides, often tucked away in glove compartments or backpacks, were not just navigational aids. They were symbols of adventure and the promise of the open road. Using a physical map or road atlas was an exercise in patience and skill. Travelers would spread out these large, often unwieldy sheets, tracing routes with their fingers, plotting courses through highways, back roads, and scenic byways. The maps were covered in a web of lines and symbols, each representing a different path to be taken, a different journey to be embarked upon. For families setting out on road trips, the map was a central part of the experience. Parents and children would huddle together, discussing routes and destinations, the map a canvas for their collective imagination. These journeys were as much about the act of traveling as they were about the destination. The map was a guide, but it also left room for spontaneity and detours, for the unexpected discoveries that lay just off the beaten path. In the hands of a traveler, a map was more than a piece of paper. It was a story waiting to be written, a series of potential adventures and memories in the making. The act of charting a course, of navigating unknown territories, was a thrilling challenge. It required a sense of direction, an ability to read and interpret the landscape, and often a willingness to ask for directions when lost. For teenagers and young adults, learning to read a map was a rite of passage, a step towards independence and self-reliance. It was a skill that instilled confidence and a sense of accomplishment. In a world without real-time updates or turn-by-turn directions, successfully navigating from point A to point B was a notable achievement. Playing outside until dark. In the 1970s, the phrase "playing outside until dark" was not just a casual remark, it was a way of life for children. This era, devoid of smartphones, tablets, and 24-hour children's television programming, saw neighborhoods transform into playgrounds where imagination and freedom reigned until the streetlights flickered on. The end of the school day marked the beginning of an unscripted adventure in the great outdoors. Children would spill into their yards, local parks, or streets, engaging in games that required nothing more than a bit of space and a lot of creativity. Games like hide and seek, tag, and kick the can weren't just pastimes, they were institutions, passed down from generation to generation. This unstructured play was a crucial part of growing up. It fostered a sense of independence as children negotiated rules, resolved disputes, and explored their boundaries without constant adult supervision. The outside world was a classroom where life skills were learned through experience, interaction, and play. Neighborhoods echoed with the sounds of laughter, shouts, and the occasional scraped knee. Bicycles were the chariots of choice, with kids racing down streets, their hair streaming in the wind, a sense of freedom and exhilaration in their wake. Trees were climbed, forts were built, and friendships were forged in these shared adventures. As dusk approached, a sense of urgency crept in. The game would reach its climax as the sky turned orange and purple, and the streetlights, the universal signal that it was time to go home, began to glow. Reluctantly, children would head back, their clothes often dirty, their faces flushed with the day's exploits, and their minds already racing with plans for the next day's adventures. Cassette mixtapes. In the 1970s, the cassette mixtape was a personal and intimate expression of one's musical taste, a carefully curated collection of songs that often served as a heartfelt gift or a diary of auditory emotions. Creating a mixtape was a labor of love, a process that involved not just selecting the right songs, but also considering the order, the flow, and the message each song conveyed. The art of making a mixtape began with the gathering of songs, a task that often involved hours of listening to the radio, waiting for favorite tracks to play, or carefully recording from vinyl records or other cassettes. Each song was chosen for a reason, be it a lyrical connection, a melody that resonated, or simply because it was part of a current obsession. The process was meticulous and time-consuming. Recording had to be started and stopped with precision to ensure that each track was captured perfectly without cutting off the beginning or the end. The sound of the click as the record and play buttons were pressed simultaneously was a familiar one, often accompanied by a sense of anticipation and excitement. Once the songs were recorded, the next step was to create the cover art and write out the track list. This was where creativity shone, with hand-drawn illustrations, carefully penned lyrics, or collages adorning the cassette's J-card. The track list was not just a list of songs, but a narrative, a journey that the creator wanted to take the listener on. Mixtapes were often exchanged among friends or given as gifts to express feelings that words alone couldn't convey. To receive a mixtape was to be given a piece of someone's inner world, a musical journey curated just for you. It was a deeply personal gesture, a way of connecting on an emotional level through the universal language of music. Typewriters. In the 1970s, the typewriter was not just a tool for writing, it was an instrument that lent a physicality and rhythm to the creative process. The clack of the keys and the ding of the carriage return were the soundtrack of productivity, resonating in offices, homes, and classrooms. For many, the typewriter was a faithful companion in the act of crafting letters, essays, and stories. Using a typewriter was a tactile experience. Each keystroke required a deliberate press, a physical engagement that made the act of writing feel more intentional. Mistakes were not easily corrected, demanding precision and forethought from the writer. The satisfaction of completing a page, pulling it from the roller, and seeing the inked words imprinted on the paper was a reward in itself. The typewriter also symbolized a different pace of life and work. There was no backspace key for quick corrections, no spell check to rely on. Typing was a skill, learned and honed over time. The sound of a room filled with the rapid-fire tapping of typewriter keys was a testament to efficiency and focus. In the world of journalism and literature, the typewriter was a revered tool. Iconic writers of the era pounded out novels, articles, and scripts on these mechanical devices, often forming a sentimental attachment to their particular model. The typewriter was a bridge between the writer's mind and the printed word, a tangible link in the creative process. For students, learning to type was an essential skill, often taught in schools with rows of typewriters lined up for practice. The methodical nature of typing on these machines instilled a sense of discipline and attention to detail. Film cameras and waiting for photos to develop. In the 1970s, photography was a practice of patience and anticipation. Film cameras, the primary tool for capturing moments, were both magical and mysterious. Unlike today's instant digital images, film required a process of development, a period of waiting that was filled with both excitement and uncertainty. Using a film camera was an exercise in mindfulness and skill. Each roll of film had a limited number of exposures, typically 24 or 36, which made every shot significant. Photographers had to consider their composition, lighting, and timing carefully, as there was no opportunity to immediately review and retake a shot. The click of the shutter was a commitment, the capture of a moment that couldn't be instantly verified or altered. After the film roll was finished, it was taken to a photo lab for development, a process that could take days. This waiting period was a time of wonder and speculation. Had the photos turned out well? Were the moments captured as intended? The anticipation added a layer of excitement to the experience, a build-up to the final reveal. When the developed photos were finally collected, it was a moment of discovery. Flipping through the prints, reliving the moments, and sometimes being surprised by the unexpected results was a unique joy. The physicality of the photos, their texture, and the way they captured light and color gave them a tangible quality that made them special. Sharing these photos was a personal and intimate act. They were passed around among friends and family, each image telling a story, sparking conversations, and evoking memories. Photo albums were treasured collections, chronicling lives and times in a way that was both artistic and documentary. TV Guide. In the 1970s, the TV Guide was more than just a publication. It was an essential household item, a weekly guide that shaped the television viewing experience. In an era before digital guides and streaming services, this small magazine held the key to the week's entertainment, offering viewers a roadmap to the limited but cherished television programming available. Every week, families would peruse the pages of the TV Guide, planning their viewing schedules. The guide offered a comprehensive listing of shows, times, and channels, along with descriptions and highlights. It was a ritual that involved the whole family, with members marking the shows they didn't want to miss and negotiating over potential viewing conflicts. The TV Guide also featured articles, interviews, and behind-the-scenes insights into popular shows and celebrities. It was a window into the world of television, offering more than just schedules. For many, it was a way to connect more deeply with their favorite shows and stars, to learn about upcoming episodes, and to immerse themselves in the broader narrative of television entertainment. In a time when television choices were limited to a handful of channels, the TV Guide played a crucial role in shaping the viewing habits of the American public. It influenced not just what people watched, but how they watched it. The act of sitting down together to watch a show at its scheduled time was a communal and anticipatory experience, a far cry from the on-demand solitary viewing habits of today. The ritual of waiting for the new edition of the TV guide, flipping through its pages, and planning one's television week was a part of the rhythm of life in the 1970s. It was a shared experience, a part of the cultural fabric of the time. Public service announcements. In the 1970s, public service announcements, PSAs, were a staple of television broadcasting, offering viewers brief intermissions of educational content amidst their regular programming. These announcements, ranging from health advice to public safety tips, were more than just informational segments. They were a unique aspect of TV culture, reflecting the societal concerns and values of the time. PSAs were often characterized by their straightforward, sometimes stark messages. They tackled a variety of issues, including drug abuse prevention, environmental conservation, and public health concerns. The style of these announcements could vary from serious and somber to quirky and humorous, but their goal was always to educate and inform the public. One of the most iconic PSAs of the era was the Keep America Beautiful campaign, which featured the famous Crying Indian ad. This powerful commercial, depicting a Native American man shedding a single tear in response to environmental pollution, became a symbol of the environmental movement and left a lasting impact on public consciousness. Another memorable PSA series was the "This Is Your Brain on Drugs" campaign, which used a simple but effective metaphor of an egg frying in a pan to warn against drug use. These PSAs were often discussed in schools and households, sparking conversations about important social issues. For children, PSAs were also educational tools. They included segments on everything from crossing the street safely to the importance of eating healthy foods. These messages were delivered in creative and engaging ways, often featuring animations or popular characters to capture the attention of younger viewers. The presence of PSAs on television also reflected a sense of responsibility by broadcasters to contribute to the public good. In an age before the internet and social media, television was one of the primary mediums for reaching a wide audience with important messages. Today, the format and delivery of public service announcements have evolved, but for those who grew up in the 1970s, these segments remain a memorable part of the television experience. They represent a time when TV served not just as a source of entertainment, but also as a tool for education and social awareness, playing a key role in shaping the public discourse on important issues.